느끼게 해드리고도 싶습니다. 외국어를 배경으로 한 작품들이 많이 알려져 있는데 만약 한국에 처음 온 외국인의 이야기를 담은 작품을 쓰게 된다면 어떤 주제와 제목을 선택할 것인지 궁금합니다. 한국에 처음 온 외국인이 등장하는 작품을 이미 몇 편 썼는데요. 한국계 외국인 입양인이 등장하는 소설이에요. 한국의 그 사촌이 같이 며칠 동안 서울을 여행하면서 겪게 되는 그런 이야기입니다. 번역가로서의 경험이 저의 글에 영향을 미쳤는지 라는 질문을 주셨습니다. 다른 언어의 문장을 한국어로 바꾸는 경험을 하다 보니까 정확한 문장을 쓰는 것의 중요성 같은 것들을 더 많이 느끼게 됩니다. 제 작품이 외국어로 번역이 되었을 때 어떤 기분이었는지, 그리고 번역본이 원작과 같은 본질을 유지한다고 생각하는지 물어보신 분이 계신데요. 번역자분들은 언제나 최대한 가장 가까이 저자가 쓴 그 본질에 다가가려고 노력하는 분들이라는 것 또한 알고 있습니다. 번역본이 갖고 있는 그 가치를 믿고 있어요. 작품이 외국어로 번역되는 과정에서 기억나는 에피소드나 경험이 있냐고 물어봐 주셨는데요. 여름의 빌라랑 참담한 빛이 일본어로 번역이 되어 있는데요. 그 일본어로 번역해 주신 역자님께서 어떤 표현들을 확인해 달라고 부탁을 해주셨어요. 제가 소설을 쓰면서 퇴고를 아주 많이 하고 문장을 정확하게 쓴다고 최대한 썼는데도 불구하고 막상 번역을 해보다 보니까 뭉뚱그리고 넘어간 표현들이 많더라고요. 그래서 문장을 쓸 때 앞으로 더 조심해야 되겠다, 더 정확하게 써야 되겠다, 그런 생각들을 많이 하게 되었습니다. 작가로 겪었던 어려움과 이를 극복한 방법이 무엇인지를 물어봐 주셨어요. 극복하는 데 도움이 되었다고 생각이 되는 부분은 글이 너무 써지지 않으면 일단 소설을 쓰는 걸 좀 멈추고 일상을 좀 즐기고 소설이 아닌 다른 글들을 조금 쓴다든지 번역을 해나가면서 극복을 해나가고 있습니다. 작가 지망생에게 해주고 싶은 조언이 있는지 물어보셨어요. 작가가 되는 방법은 그저 쓰는 것뿐이라고 말을 하고 있는데요. 저는 그 말이 정말 맞는 말이라고 생각합니다. 그 비슷한 말을 들려주고 싶어요. 두려워할 시간에 차라리 쓰라고 그런 이야기를 들려주고 싶습니다. 네. 이렇게 채팅이라는 방식을 통해서 독자님들과 만나 이야기를 나눌 수 있어서 즐거웠습니다. 이 기회를 통해서 저의 번역된 소설들 또는 한국어로 된 소설들도 관심 있게 읽어주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 저뿐만 아니라 많은 한국 작가들이 작품 활동을 열심히 하고 있으니까 한국 문학도 사랑해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 지금까지 소설 쓰는 백소린이었습니다.
In our headlines on this Wednesday, July 9th, here in South Korea. The record-breaking heat wave remains relentless across the country as the number of heat-related health emergencies soars in recent days, prompting calls for caution for the vulnerable. Meanwhile, over in the US, during a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Donald Trump claimed South Korea should be paying for its own military as it is making a lot of money. Separately, the Trump administration's sector-specific tariffs are looking to be expanded to include a 50% tariff on copper imports into the US market and a 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals. We start here on the local front today as Seoul seeks to survive yet another day of extreme heat. I have our Park Hyo-bin out in central Seoul for an actual gauge of the heat wave here in the capital city. Hyo-bin, it's a little after 5 p.m. and I believe the heat remains relentless outdoors.
Yes, good afternoon, Sunny. I'm standing here at Cheonggyecheon Stream in central Seoul, and I've been here for 10 minutes, and honestly, the sweat is already pouring out. Today feels just as hot as yesterday, which marked the hottest early July day in 118 years, as the current temperature hit 35 degrees, although the feels-like temperature is up to 37 degrees. Now that it's close to evening, the temperatures have eased a little. A bit of relief is also expected with some rain in the forecast for parts of the country later today. But we're likely in for another tropical night when temperatures stay above 25 degrees even after 6 p.m. Seoul has already had 10 in a row. Due to the extreme heat, the Korea Meteorological Administration issued a heat wave warning across the country. This alert is issued when the feels-like temperature is expected to be above 35 degrees for more than 2 days in a row in large parts of the country. Earlier this afternoon at 3 p.m., the mercury hit 38.8 degrees in Paju City, Gyeonggi-do Province, while Seoul recorded around 35.8 degrees. So people are doing whatever they can do to stay cool, finding shade, or cooling off by Cheonggyecheon Stream. Let's take a listen.
Actually, it's today is done better than yesterday actually, but still so warm actually because I'm just like sweating a lot. So yeah, it's so hot.
It's really hot.
Really humid. Hot and humid.
It's kind of hard to do anything outside.
Right, indeed. Hyo-bin, health experts have been calling on members of the public to refrain from prolonged outdoor activity given the heat. That being said, what can you tell us about the reports concerning the health-related incidents from the scorching heat?
Yes, unfortunately, as of 4 p.m. on Wednesday, at least 8 people have died from the heat-related illnesses this summer. So the number of overall heat-related illnesses has reached over 1,200 so far, more than double the figure from the same period last year, according to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency. In response to the extreme heat, the Seoul Metropolitan Government held an emergency meeting on Tuesday morning to review countermeasures. The authorities are calling for enhanced real-time monitoring and stronger protection for vulnerable groups, including the elderly, outer workers, and farmers. They're also advising people to avoid being outside between noon and 5 p.m., to drink plenty of water, and to seek help right away if they feel symptoms such as dizziness or a headache, which are common signs of heat-related illnesses. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Hyo-bin, thank you for braving the blistering heat to bring us that report. That was our Park Hyo-bin at Cheonggyecheon Stream in downtown Seoul. Moving on, one day after sending South Korea a letter unilaterally informing the country about a 25% tariff starting August, U.S. President Donald Trump took issue with the cost of maintaining American troop presence here on the Korean peninsula. An Sung-jin covers his latest remarks.
U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing for a one-stop shopping deal with South Korea on defense and trade. At the White House on Tuesday, Trump stated that its Asian ally was underpaying for military protection. He reiterated his hardline stance that Seoul should increase its contributions to U.S. defense costs, referring back to negotiations during his first term, where he claimed he demanded that Seoul should pay $10 billion a year in defense cost sharing, a figure far above current levels.
You know, we have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea, and, you know, that's a huge economic development for them. That's tremendous amount. That's like having a city. That's tremendous money for them, and it's a tremendous loss for us. So,
unlike Trump's assertion, there are currently around 28,000 U.S. military troops in Korea. And regarding Trump's remarks, the South Korean government said that it will comply with the existing defense cost-sharing agreement between the two countries. The Foreign Ministry on Wednesday stated that the existing 12th Special Measures Agreement contributes to a joint defense position, and added that it is inappropriate to react to every single remark made by a foreign leader. As Trump's remarks continue to stir debate on the alliance between the two countries, an expert says Korea should show flexibility and try to negotiate with the people in charge from various stakeholder ministries.
It's not really clear to me that Donald Trump fully appreciates, for example, the American Alliance Network, right? He sort of attacks U.S. allies on a fairly regular basis. So I would encourage South Korea to go slow a little bit and see if they can sort of move the debate away from the executive level.
South Korea's defense cost-sharing issue and the need to preserve its security alliance with the U.S. adds to the complexity of the high-stakes negotiations. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And staying with news out of the White House, the Trump administration's sector-specific tariffs are looking to include a 50% tariff on copper imports into the American market and a 200% tariff on pharmaceutical imports. Our economic correspondent Park Jun-han has more.
On Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a plan to impose a 50% tariff on copper imports, prompting markets to push copper prices to a record high.
We did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out. And that's copper. And we did cars. And now, today, we're doing copper. I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%. 50%.
After Trump's announcement, copper prices jumped to a record high, ending their trading day up 13.12%, the largest one-day gain since 1989, at approximately $5.69 per pound. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the U.S. imports about 50% of the refined copper it uses each year. Over 90% of copper imports, roughly 1 million tons, come from Chile, Canada, and Peru. While the Trump administration aims to revive domestic copper production, the new tariffs are likely to raise costs for American manufacturers. On the same day, Trump hinted at tariffs of up to 200% on pharmaceuticals, along with possible duties on semiconductors that could take effect by late July. A market analyst noted that while the market currently views the impact as limited, it could come under pressure if the proposed chip tariffs exceed expectations.
The impact of the tariffs has not yet been significant, as South Korea has already built, or is in the process of building, semiconductor factories in the U.S., and the specific tariff rate has yet to be announced. However, if a high rate is imposed, it will inevitably affect the Korean semiconductor industry and the stock market.
Trump's sector-specific tariff plan, based on Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which allows the president to restrict imports that threaten national security, came a day after he sent tariff letters to 14 trading partners, including South Korea, outlining new tariff rates effective August 1st. Trump is set to send letters to 15 to 20 more countries in the coming days. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
In other news, President Lee Jae-myung has named 2 vice ministers for the Office for Government Policy Coordination, and both individuals are from within the agency. Kim Young-soo, currently heading the Planning and Coordination Office, has been tapped as first vice minister. The top office says Kim has much expertise in policy planning, coordination, and evaluation. Meanwhile, Kim Yong-soo, who leads the Economic Policy Coordination Division, has been appointed second vice minister. He is expected to support the government's growth strategy by promoting regulatory reform and development in AI, biotech, and semiconductors. The Office for Government Policy Coordination serves as a control tower for policies that involve several ministries. Also, at the Yongsan Presidential Office on this Wednesday, President Lee Jae-myung hosted a luncheon with religious leaders from 7 major faiths, including Buddhism and Catholicism. Sharing concern over the public polarization here in South Korea, the president called on religious communities to help build harmony, adding that their role has become more important than ever, given the shared values of love and respect. The chair of the Korean Council of Religious Leaders, in response, pledged to work with the president to create a more peaceful and stable country. A public hearing opened at the Nat'l Assembly today to gather expert opinions on prosecution reform bills championed by the ruling Democratic Party. The hearing centres on 4 proposals that aim to limit prosecutors' roles to indictments and trials and to establish new agencies to take over and coordinate investigations. The DP is also ramping up internal efforts with a task force spotlighting prosecutorial overreach and what it calls politically motivated indictments tied to key ruling party figures. It aims to complete the legislative process by the Chuseok holiday in early October. 6 North Korean fishermen who unintentionally drifted into South Korean waters earlier this year have been sent home today. Our correspondent Kim Jung-sil reports.
These rare photos show 6 North Korean fishermen making their journey home. Despite their small size, these photos show the end of a months-long journey after the fishermen were rescued from South Korean waters. For their return, the group traveled together in a single wooden boat in the East Sea, and at 8:56 a.m., they crossed the northern limit line. By 9:24 a.m., a North Korean vessel made contact with the boat, and both vessels began their journey back to the north. The 6 fishermen in their 30s and 40s were stranded in boats that drifted into the East and West Seas in March and May. Since direct communication between the 2 Koreas were severed in 2023, Seoul coordinated through the UNC to convey its message about the fishermen's return. While North Korea did not confirm directly, its actions spoke louder.
At the handover, a North Korean patrol boat was stationed at the designated point, and the vessel returned under its own power, completing the repatriation smoothly and safely.
The Ministry of Unification verified their voluntary wish to return with consent confirmed. Experts say Wednesday's repatriation reflects North Korea's ongoing attention to South Korea.
North Korea's response shows they're watching South Korea's peace efforts, and if the new government remains sincere, a positive response from the North may not be far off.
This isn't the first repatriation of its kind. Similar cases took place in 2017 when fishermen also expressed a strong desire to return to the North. Despite delays, officials emphasized that Wednesday's decision was driven by humanitarian concerns and respect for the individual's wishes. A ministry official expressed hope that better communication between the South and North could lead to smoother future repatriations. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
In our second installment of Stories from Spain, which has become this year's overseas centre stage for the Korean wave, my colleague Cheonggyecheon touches upon the use of immersive technology to offer residents in Madrid the chance to experience K-culture from the comfort of their city. To take a look.
Wearing a virtual reality headset, a participant swings her arms freely, learning a martial art from the Joseon dynasty.
I think it's very beautiful to know how is the Korean culture, the temples, all. And it's funny. It's very fun. The second thing I did. And I think people we live in Spain, it's a very good form to learn.
Suwon Hwasong, one of Korea's most iconic cultural heritage sites in Cheonggyecheon province, comes vividly alive right before your eyes.
I think that it was quite similar to reality because it showed like the colors spaced in a very realistic way. Also the explanation and the small details like the ceilings with those color combinations and the small animals walking through was really cute.
At the Korean Cultural Center in Madrid, Korea's traditional culture has been fully digitized through a comprehensive database process, allowing visitors to experience it in digital format without even setting foot in Korea. In other sites in the venue, unique reinterpretations of the Joseon dynasty's white porcelain are on display, all created using malchong or horsehair. Chung Da-hae became the first Korean artist to win the prestigious Loewe Craft Prize, a leading award in Spain's contemporary craft scene.
This work, it merged the tradition and the innovation. It's very important for Spain also to receive a work like this, very natural, and from Loeb Foundation. They are very happy to receive this kind of artists. So they selected in 2022.
Right now, Spain is completely immersed in Korean culture. Since 2022, South Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism has selected one country each year with a strong potential to spread Korean culture, offering a year-long series of culture programs. This year's Korea season takes place in Spain. In particular, the Korean Cultural Center here is set to host around 60 events throughout the year.
The center is carrying out this year's Korea season under the key theme of expansion. Beyond just popular areas like K-pop, we are working to highlight all things across K-culture, from fine arts and exhibitions to literature, webtoons, fashion, and beauty.
Moreover, after Hangang's Nobel win last year, Korean literature is gaining a lot of interest in Spain. That's why, in the second half of the year, Korean literature events will take center stage.
October has been designated as Literature Month, and we're promoting Korean literature as a focus country at Madrid's Liber International Book Fair. At the same time, we will be the guest of honor at Barcelona's Cosmopolis International Festival of Literature.
Through the end of this year, a dynamic cultural journey will unfold across Spain, connecting the richness of Korean culture with the world. Cheonggyecheon, Arirang News, Madrid.
Meanwhile, on the entertainment front, Squid Game Season 3 has made Netflix history. According to Netflix's top 10 website on this Wednesday, the final season ranked #1 among non-English shows in all 93 countries, where the chart is tracked for the second straight week. Now, it's the first time any Netflix series has held the top spot in every tracked country for 2 consecutive weeks. All 3 seasons of Squid Game currently occupy the top 3 spots on Netflix's list of the most popular non-English shows of all time. South Korea has been hosting an annual youth camp for athletes with disabilities for well over a decade, and our Park Ono spoke to some of this year's participants. To take a listen.
Running at full speed without falling, drenched in sweat but still smiling. 16-year-old John, who has dwarfism, dreams of one day competing on the Olympic stage, representing his country as a badminton player. He's been training hard, already around a decade since he first picked up a racket. Nothing stops him from pushing limits. Instead, he's eager to keep improving.
I want a new experience for me. Korea is more advanced in training, and they giving knowledge for all players. They have so much respect for others. I like that.
John is one of around 60 participants from 16 different countries who came to Korea this summer to take part in the annual International Parasports Youth Camp in Icheon, Gyeonggi-do Province. And determination was shown across the court, where shuttlecocks flew rapidly, with players, some in wheelchairs, moving back and forth with precision and speed. This year's program not only features badminton, but also powerlifting and archery, offering young athletes with disabilities the opportunity to train and dream big. This barbell feels very heavy to me, but for them, it seems like it's almost no big deal. It's not the body that holds them back, but it's the strength inside that drives them forward. At the weightlifting gym, effort and spirit echoed with every lift. Some may not be able to use all parts of their body, but that hasn't stopped them from lifting bars and chasing their goals.
I want to go to the Paralympics and be a champion so I can earn money and make my parents proud. So I need to stay disciplined and train consistently, especially here where the facility is good.
Even when facing physical barriers, these young lifters stayed focused and consistent. Korean archery powerhouse is also sharing its expertise with these future champions. Coaches are helping the participants to adjust their posture and techniques.
Just like everyone's bone structure is different, each person's disability and range of movement also varies. So we teach them based on each athlete's condition and strength. Even for complete beginners, we structure training step by step and make sure it's fun and sustainable.
In the end, what matters isn't the physical ability, but the will. And with that in mind, these young athletes continue to run, lift, and aim toward their dreams. 박건우, Arirang News, Icheon.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. French President Emmanuel Macron has made a state visit to the United Kingdom, receiving a ceremonial welcome from the British royal family and pledging renewed bilateral relations.
The United Kingdom and France must once again show the world that our alliance can make all the difference. Clearly, we have to work together in order to defend an efficient multilateralism.
On Tuesday, Macron and First Lady Brigitte began their three-day visit with a full royal welcome at Windsor Castle, greeted by King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William, and Princess Catherine in a horse-drawn carriage procession and guard of honor inspection. Macron delivered a rare address to both houses of parliament, urging Britain and France to reduce excessive dependencies on the U.S. and China and calling for joint action on defense, migration, climate, and AI. He also announced $1.5 billion of EDF investment in a UK nuclear plant and a cultural loan deal to bring the Beja Tapestry to Britain for the first time in more than 900 years. This is the first state visit by a European leader since Brexit and the first for a French president since 2008. Israel has carried out a targeted airstrike in northern Lebanon, reportedly killing a senior Hamas figure, one of the first hits in the region in months. The Israeli military announced on Tuesday that it had struck a key Hamas operative traveling in a car near Arirang, just south of Lebanon's second-largest city, Tripoli, marking the first targeted assassination in the region since November. Lebanese state media confirmed the strike hit a vehicle, killing at least 3 people and wounding 13 others. Al Arabi TV quoted a Hamas source in Lebanon, stating no senior official was killed, though Israel maintains its target was high-ranking. The recent strike came as U.S. envoy Thomas Barrack visited Lebanon amid efforts to disarm Hezbollah. However, Hezbollah chief Naim Qassem on Sunday ruled out giving up the group's weapons before Israel withdraws from all of southern Lebanon. Liverpool's Portuguese forward Diogo Jota and his brother Andre Silva were likely speeding when the rear tire of their car blew out, causing the crash that killed them both, according to a preliminary report from Spain's Civil Guard on Tuesday. Investigators say a tire imprint analysis suggests Jota, confirmed to be driving, was traveling well above the speed limit of 120 kilometers per hour while overtaking on a highway near Zamora, Spain, just before midnight on July 3rd. Evidence indicates that the overspeeding caused the Lamborghini in which they were traveling to veer off the road and crash. The results of the on-site investigation will be sent to the local court before being made public. A Martian meteorite weighing over 24 kilograms is going under the hammer. The specimen, known as NWA 16788, is verified as the largest piece of Mars ever found on Earth. It is estimated to fetch between $2 million and $4 million at Sotheby's upcoming auction in New York on July 16th. Before the sale, the meteorite will be on public display in Sotheby's galleries from July 8th to 15th. The rare chunk, which represents more than 6% of all Martian material found on Earth, was discovered in Niger in 2023. Though it is unclear exactly when it landed on Earth, minimal weathering suggests a recent fall. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
The heat wave in the western parts of the country is severe. The daytime temperatures were similar to yesterday, when Seoul's high of 37 degrees Celsius broke its all-time high for early July. It soared to 38 degrees during the day in Gwangmyeong. The steamy heat around the west will continue for the time being. Under clear skies, the UV index will rise to very high levels from the morning. Please refrain from outdoor activities between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon to avoid any heat-related illnesses. Tomorrow morning, Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Jeju will start off at 25 degrees, Gyeongju 22 degrees. Daily highs move up to 35 degrees in Seoul and Gwangju, 31 degrees in Daegu and Busan. Summer heat of around 35 degrees will continue around the Seoul metropolitan area. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. So do stay with us and thank you for now.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개방.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Senior officials of the Lee Jae-myung administration were quick to respond to the Trump administration's latest tariff threat, as they were already in Washington meeting with their U.S. counterparts when news of Donald Trump sending a tariff letter to his South Korean counterpart made headlines. With more on Press Perspective today. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Press Perspective. It's July 9th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. The July 9th deadline of the pause on country-specific U.S. tariffs ends today, but the Trump administration has extended that pause to August 1st. It's also sent a letter to its ally, South Korea, unilaterally informing the country of a 25% tariff, even as senior officials of the Lee Jae-myung administration were engaged in related talks with their American counterparts over in Washington. For more, I have Rui Valdez with Spanish news agency EFE Spain here in the studio. Rui, welcome back.
A pleasure to be here, Sonny.
I also have Professor Oh Jun-seok at Sookmyung Women's University joining our talk virtually. Professor Oh, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, Sonny.
Right, we will start here in the studio. Rui, let's begin with the latest regarding U.S. tariffs. The pause on country-specific tariffs, as I mentioned earlier, comes to an end on this Wednesday, and the Trump administration spoke of two options. One, a letter informing trade partners of a tariff rate set by the Trump administration, or tariff deals. Now, South Korea, for its part, received such a letter. Let's begin there.
That's right. The letters have landed, and Seoul is bracing for a high-stake negotiation in the rest of the month. As you mentioned, President Lee Jae-myung received a letter from Donald Trump announcing that the U.S. will apply 25% reciprocal tariffs as a decision, and that it will be and the tariffs will be applied from August 1st. This could be, in a way, for optics, is very good because it was all over in social media. We could see the image of the letter of Trump, but the fact that he mentioned that the tariffs will start until August has been interpreted by Seoul as an extension, as a tacit extension of the negotiations. So, being that said, the response of Seoul has been in that line. The Trade Ministry has stated that they will use the remaining month to keep pushing on getting a different deal. Yesterday, South Korea convened an emergency meeting where its chief policy aide stressed prioritizing national interest over haste, while urging ministry to support affected sectors and diversify exports. This is all combined with previous meetings, during a previous meeting that Seoul officials have been having with high-profile U.S. officials in the U.S. We will elaborate this a little bit later on. And one thing that we need to take into account in the discussion of today is that based on documents from Congress, statements from U.S. and South Korea, it seems that the negotiations are focused on non-tariff barriers. This is because, thanks to the free trade agreement between Seoul and the U.S., basically, according from South Korean side and many experts, South Korea doesn't really apply or nearly zero, applies nearly zero tariffs to products of the U.S. So when Trump is calling these reciprocal tariffs, it's because he's considering tariffs, non-tariff barriers as the ones to justify this policy. What's at stake on this? Some analysts estimate that if the full tariffs are applied, it will cost between 0.3 and 0.4 percentage points of GDP this year, and of course, it will affect the whole export-led economic model of South Korea, that where the U.S. account to over 18% of total trade for South Korea.
Right. And before we delve deeper into the situation between South Korea and the U.S. with regard to tariffs, Rui, how many tariff deals has the U.S. sealed thus far?
Yeah, thus far it has made deals with United Kingdom, Vietnam, and China. Trump promised that he will get 90 trade deals in 90 days, but that it has felt quite short, this promise. Also, some of these deals steers there are some gray areas that are not clear, especially regarding China. But just in a general sense, the deal with the United Kingdom, in that deal, U.S. agreed to cut tariffs on British cars, steel and aluminium, while the UK lowered tariffs on U.S. goods like wine and sports equipment. The UK was spared from the U.S. 50% steel and aluminium hike that I repeat this because this applies to many other countries, including South Korea. But still is facing 25% duties in this sector. Regarding the deal with Vietnam, Vietnamese goods face a reduced tariff, reduced 20% tariffs, down from the original proposed that it was 46%, and includes a new 40% tariffs on transshipped goods, aimed at stopping Chinese products from evading tariffs via Vietnam, as using Vietnam as the origin country, but they are really Chinese products, according to the U.S. is, let's just say that Vietnam agree to apply these tariffs under that justification. And with China, which is one of the most interesting ones, but as I mentioned, it's also one of the most gray ones in the sense that they agreed to ease punitive tariffs, now set at 30% on Chinese goods and 20% on U.S. goods. This is considerable because they were reduced from 145% and 125% respectively. China pledged to facilitate U.S. access to rare earths and key manufacturing materials, and the U.S. resumed exports of airplane parts and chemicals, and also relaxed visa restrictions for Chinese students. Still, this has been more an announcement than really a dealing paper that have been shown to the public. So we have to really wait to read the small letters in this. Based on all this, in the latest, just as a fun fact, in the latest fact sheet released by the White House yesterday regarding the letters, they called Trump the best trade negotiator in history. This is quite, I mention this because I don't believe a statement like this has been said for any other U.S. presidents by their own White House. But well, I leave you there and the public to judge.
Right, and I will take it from there then. So, Professor, as Rui just mentioned, there are some who believe that this latest move, and I'm talking about the letters being sent to U.S. trade partners, this particular move by the Trump administration is a negotiation strategy. Do you agree? And simply speaking, Professor what is Mr. Trump's strategy, so to speak?
Definitely, I agree. The move will be a part of negotiation strategy. Starting from August 1st, as Rui mentioned, no extension will be granted. President Trump posted a flurry of letters, which is not that common, warning world leaders, including South Africa, Malaysia, and Thailand, outlining tariff ranging from 25% to 40%. First of all, when the fact is considered that the margin from international trade on the average would be around 30%. Actualizing Trump's reciprocal tariff means no trade strategy or economic isolation of the United States. When Trump administration insists 15% or less would be the maximum affordability of doing business related to international trade with the United States. In this respect, I guess, repetitive ongoing cycle as a first step, giving a shot and negotiation and further application and renegotiation, gradually and eventually converging into lowering the tariff rate itself. Another thing to count in on, such trade disputes as transshipping limitation and product origin requirement could be basically be solved by a series of investment negotiation, one by one. It will be applied to Korean multinational companies. It's time to start investment negotiation and definitely a time to wait for the decision, because they will lose their power of negotiation right after they declare to make a decision. Quite recently, in the fierce trade war, the U.S. and China agree on trade framework to ease tensions on trade and investment, but many details remain vague. Canada has scrapped its digital service tax set to affect large U.S. tech companies. In response, the White House had resumed the trade talks. The moves highlighted the topsy-turvy nature of the president's trade policy, which now theoretically allows more time for negotiation. Trade brinkmanship will be served by incremental investment deal. So investors now wait to see if this agreement can withstand a new round of trade framework.
Right. And against that backdrop, Professor what countermeasures has the South Korean government shared to offset perhaps U.S. tariff repercussions? And what are your thoughts? I mean, are there any structural policies that you believe should take priority?
President Trump published a letter signaled a hardening of U.S. trade posture, 25% reciprocal tariff on all Korean exports set to take effect on August 1st. For Korea, the next 3 weeks represent a critical window to prevent a potential severe economic blow. Now the problem is how to buy more time for Korea to find a solution regarding trade and investment. Korean government is busy making proposals to support the U.S. effort to rebuild and strengthen its manufacturing capacity in key areas, including shipbuilding and chip productions. This drastic move comes as Korea lags behind other negotiations with Trump administrations. Other countries like Japan and China making daring move to counter the tariff. As for countermeasures, as Sonny mentioned, we have to think about the geo-economic spectrum of defense strategy of the Korean government. Korean government has to build up a comprehensive economic alliance with that of Japan and that of China. While considering renegotiation phase of FTA between Korea and China now under progress, trilateral FTA as diversification and economic alliance strategy among Korea, Japan, and China would also be a feasible alternative to strengthen the negotiation status. And as the United Kingdom decide to participate in CPTPP, Korea's joining CPTPP might be needed as soon as possible. Trump administration aggressively compels countries like Korea to diversify their trade portfolios and rethink their economic relations with the United States. The European Union and Korea should overcome their misgivings and join the CPTPP. A majority of the world still believe we believe in the value of the multilateralism with rules and norms and predictability, and have benefit from a WTO regime of creating shared prosperity, even if the U.S. pursues an American first policy.
Right. Rui, as I mentioned at the start of our talk, news of Mr. Trump sending a letter to his South Korean counterpart made headlines while South Korean officials were in Washington seeking talks with their U.S. counterparts regarding the tariffs. What were some of the issues on the table?
Right. Yeah, so as a little bit before this was happening, a little before the deadline for the letters, South Korea chief trade negotiator Young Han-gu met with U.S. Trade Representative Jamison Greer, and in that meeting, Yo pressed Seoul's case for avoiding or reducing all types of tariffs and to propose manufacturing cooperation framework. This, to this date, or since the negotiations started, South Korea has asked the U.S. either to scrap or reduce sectoral tariffs, but also reciprocal tariffs. This letter, as we have been discussing, are referred to reciprocal tariffs. Still, South Korea has the hope that the tariffs imposed on steel and aluminum, which are the sectoral tariffs, will be also reduced or scrapped. Being that said, U.S. to this day have not given signals that those specific sectoral tariffs are under discussion. In fact, the few things that have been mentioned from the U.S. side is that they are not considering these tariffs as part of these negotiations. Of course, this could change. As we know, with Trump administration, things are unpredictable, and maybe they end up somehow integrating them in the negotiation. But well, this was looked in the first meeting. Then we have a National Security Advisor, Wee Sung-lak, that went also to Washington and met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. In that meeting, we pushed for a summit between President Lee Jae-myung and President Trump, and it is expected that what South Korea wants is to have this summit before the 1st of August, in a way to also make it part of the negotiations, or at least to alleviate tensions related to these negotiations, because South Korea is very concerned, as we have been mentioning. Professor O explained it much better than me, how these tariffs will affect South Korean economy and how South Korea doesn't have as much leverage as other countries. So they're trying, let's say South Korea is going all in this sense to try to get a mutually beneficial deal. They're calling it, but at least something that affects less South Korea. Finally, South Korea Chief Trade Negotiator met U.S. Secretary of Commerce Lutnick, and there he again pressed for reductions again in sectoral tariffs, including steel. But we don't know how the U.S. reacted to that demand that has been keep showing up from the South Korean side. As we have been mentioned, what has been in the table. What we have to do, the media or the experts, is try to get different bits from different sources, because there has not been a fully disclosed from official sources of what is negotiating. But there has been many signals that from different types of reports, congressional letters, as I mentioned, from U.S. and some statement from South Korean officials, that the sectors that are being discussed are focused on non-tariff barriers and are related for big tech and digital rules. For example, U.S. officials raised concern about South Korea planned antitrust and platform regulations that they say unfairly targets U.S. tech giants like Google and Apple, while sparing Chinese firms. There are some rumors, still nothing confirmed, that South Korea is actually delaying the approval or freezing a little bit the approval of this policy to somehow show the U.S. that they will agree on this part. Washington also pressed for changes to sole restriction on exporting mapping data and network fees for streaming service like Netflix. And one of the most sounded ones is agricultural access. The U.S. demanded better access for beef, rice, potatoes, and other agricultural goods, with a specific criticism that South Korea has a ban on beef from cattle that is over 30 months. South Korea does this to prevent mad cow disease coming into the country, but U.S. considered that as an exaggeration or something that could be extended. Washington also, Korean officials pledged to defend the sensitivity of the sector, giving a strong domestic opposition. And finally, what South Korean side has proposed, as I mentioned, has to do with manufacturing cooperation, industrial cooperation, also in artificial intelligence, chips, batteries, cars, and semiconductors, in a way to, based on the calculation made by the U.S., reduce this U.S. trade deficit. And the other that are quite important, but they are not, again, or at least by the U.S. and South Korea, they have not been clear if they are going to be part of this negotiation. It's the potential Korean participation in the Alaska gas duct project, worth $44 billion, which remains under review, and the whole discussion about the defense cost sharing of U.S. troops in South Korea. In fact, President Trump mentioned a couple of hours ago that he still thinks that South Korea should contribute more in this. Of course, we're talking about all these sectors, practically all sectors that are available in economics, in defense, in everything. So yeah, it's going to be, at least from the information that we have now, is that there's a focus on non-tariff barriers, and these other last two that I mentioned, many people believe that are also on the table.
Right. Then against this need to address a trade again between South Korea and the US, Professor, are FTAs, do you suppose, losing their protective edge amid the presence of US tariffs? I mean, what is the fate of South Korea's FTA with the US given Mr. Trump's pursuit of tariffs?
Yes, it is true. Trade between Korea and the United States has given largely free from tariff under the Korea and the US FTA, in short, KOROS FTA, which took effect in 2012. But the Trump administration has argued that the bilateral trade remains unfair. It is true. With the Trump administration implementing reciprocal tariff on all countries, the fate of the KOROS FTA is facing mounting questions, with concerns that new tariff could significantly undermine its benefits. However, the trade pact serves as the foundational framework for trade between Seoul and Washington, an important tool for trade negotiations with the United States. The KOROS FTA, in this sense, the main framework of the two countries' comprehensive negotiations for trade and investment. There may be various types of negotiations, but talks within the pact framework will be much more advantageous and then benevolent for Korea than other communication channels. Unlike the executive orders signed unilaterally by the U.S. President, KOROS FTA is an international treaty forged through formal government-to-government negotiations. This provides Korea with a relatively equal footing in trade talks, at least in form, even if practical asymmetries remain. The KOROS FTA is a comprehensive agreement spanning a wide range of industries, gives Korea room to negotiate trade across sectors, allowing it to offset losses in one area with gains in another, and helping maintaining balance in overall national interest of Korea. It is, however, hard to rule out the likelihood of the U.S. demanding renegotiation for the KOROS FTA. Korea has to ensure that any agreement reached through negotiations does not deviate from the fundamental framework of the current KOROS FTA.
Right, indeed. All right, Professor O, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this edition. Thank you so much, as always, for your insights, Professor O.
Thank you for having me.
And Rui here in the studio, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
I'm glad to be here.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching, and do join us again same time tomorrow.